Hello, I'm Christina Troutman from Capgemini. Thank you so much for your patience as we sorted through some technical issues on the call today. We appreciate you staying with us. And thank you so much for joining us for the webinar titled OBIEE 11g Upgrade Considerations. Your presenter today will be Marty Mersinger. Marty is a senior solution engineer, and he's been with BICG for about 5 years now. He has 20 years of professional experience and 11 years of experience with the OBIEE product. A little about the flow of today's presentation. Marty will present, and then we'll have some time at the conclusion of the presentation for a brief Q&A session. We encourage you to ask questions, and they can be submitted anytime through the question pane on your control panel. Also, please be sure to stay until the end of our webinar, as we'll be giving away free training tokens to 2 lucky attendees. Without further ado, let's begin today's presentation, and with that, I'll hand it over to Marty.
Welcome, everyone. It's been a while since we've had a webinar, and good to see things are getting back onto track again. So this one here will be on the 11G upgrade, looking at various aspects around the 11G. Let me. So as Tina mentioned, my name is Marty Mersinger. I am a solution engineer, architect with BICG Capgemini. I've been doing this for about 11 to 12 years now. And so hopefully you'll find this information useful, especially if you're looking or if you're in the process of doing an upgrade. Got a lot of good, useful information in regards to moving into the 11G environment. So just give you a brief overview of what we're going to talk about here today. We're going to look at upgrade versus migration, what works best, the preparations that you would need to make or that are recommended that you make to get started into the upgrade process. Look at some of the security model differences between 10G and 11G, what still works, what's going to change, so you have be able to leverage that. Look at the Upgrade Assistant, which is a command line tool that is provided with the 11G OBI instance. Then we'll do a brief demonstration, go through some of the post-upgrade tasks that you're going to be faced after you've gone through the upgrade itself, and then look at some possible appearance and behavioral changes that you may have to take into consideration, and also be able to do some regression testing, things that you're going to be looking for. And then we'll, as Tina said, we'll try for a few Q&As as long as time provides.
Hey Marty, this is Tina. Apologies for the interruption, but just wanted to let you know that you're not currently sharing your presentation. So if you can go ahead and do that, it would be great.
Let's see. It's saying I'm showing.
Hey Marty, Brian here. Are you seeing a prompt?
Yeah, Brian.
Are you seeing a prompt to show your screen?
Yeah, it's saying I'm sharing, so.
Okay, I'm just going to switch it back to myself for a moment and then try to hand it back over.
There we go.
And now you should have been prompted again. Okay, there we go.
Yep. All right. Hopefully you're seeing my screen now.
We are.
Okay. So as I said, I just back up here a little bit, quickly look at the agenda, going through the upgrade migration, preparation, security model, the upgrade assistant, quick demo, post-upgrade, and appearance and behavioral changes. So starting out with the upgrade and migration, some of the things you're going to have to look at and consider is what are the requirements to do an upgrade. So you can see here you've got to be on at least OBIEE 11g or later. And if you're looking at upgrading via publisher and real-time decision information, there's also version considerations that you have to look at before you can move there. If you're on an older version and you do want to get to the upgrade, you're going to have to do it in steps. What I mean is you'd have to take your older version, upgrade it to a compatible release version, and then do the migration from there. You also want to look at whether the upgrade is right for you. We mentioned that this is looking at both upgrade and migration. One or the other may work for you. So there's considerations we've got listed that will help you make that decision. Things for food for thought, per se. Then we have to make sure we've got an 11g environment installed and running. And this would be just a basic default installation that we can migrate into from our 10g. And you're going to want to know what the 11g directory structure is looking like, where things are at, because it is quite a bit different than the 10g structure. And we'll go into the reasons why you want to know that information in a little bit here. Then finally, within your 11g, we said it has to be up and running. There's a number of things that have changed with 11g, such as how things start and as well as what kind of services are actually running. Because now we're running using Fusion middleware with WebLogic as a default server. So we got to make sure our admin and managed servers are up and running for that upgrade process to be effective. And then finally, we want to make sure that our 10g data sources and the components we're going to upgrade are accessible. RPD, the metadata file, the web catalog, those need to be accessible to the 11g server in order for the upgrade to take place. And then because 11g upgrade will put your systems online as soon as the upgrade is done, you've got to make sure those data sources that you're connecting to are accessible from that 11g server then as well. So I said upgrade versus migration, right? What do we mean by that? First of all, using the upgrade assistant is what we're talking about from an upgrade standpoint. This is where we're moving from a lower version, such as 10.1.3.4.1, to a higher version like 11.1.1.5. Then we got to look at a migration versus an upgrade, where the migration, we're using higher version files and reapplying the lower version customizations. What I mean like that is we would take, say, an 11.1.1.5 RPD and reapply any customizations you may have made to an older version. And this kind of goes into how many customizations you've made, how extensive they are. But those are things that you may have to consider. Also, whether or not your current older version is supported within 11g, this may be another option of just migrating those customizations. This really comes in handy if you're dealing with and considering a BI apps move. So some of the other aspects that we're talking about that you have to consider during your upgrade is what is your current version, as we already saw. Your metadata, whether or not it's based on custom or a BI apps. If it's custom, you're going to upgrade it. If it's a BI apps, depends on what your customizations are, what's been applied. And this is where, you know, maybe a migration versus an upgrade may be better. It'll get you onto that next apps release much quicker. The amount of customizations made, as I had stated, what version of the BI apps. For example, I know some people that are on 7.8, an older release of the BI apps still made some heavy customizations. In order for them to move up to, say, 7.9.6.3 and 11g, they would have to do a migration upwards of the apps before they move things in. So they'd have to go to a 10g environment upgrade there and then upgrade the information from there. Another consideration is what new version features are you desired or required. Maybe there's really nothing you're looking for from a functionality standpoint. You just want to get to the app level that it's on, that 11g is not currently supporting. Other reasons that you may consider. So, maybe you want to maintain your Oracle support and licensing because you are on an older release. So these are all considerations of what you want to deal with and consider when you're looking at upgrading versus a migration to get you up there. So now we've got some preparations that we've got to make. We've already decided, all right, we're going to do the upgrade. We're going to go through that process. So let's look at some of the preparations to help make that a little bit smoother and kind of help ensure a successful upgrade. So we want to know what our system's all about. What are we going to upgrade? So we want to look at, what is the repository? How big is it? What is the name of it? Also, how big is it and what's the name of our BI presentation catalog? Some places have multiple catalogs, so we got to make sure of which one we're selecting when we're doing that, whether or not we're going to have any kind of issues from a sizing perspective, make sure we've got plenty of size when we do that migration. Some migrations we get into, Publisher, it's a multi-step process to upgrade. So we need to know what we've got out there that we're moving. Then you need to understand what is your current security model and how is that going to differ and how is it going to change when we upgrade to the 11G. Because we want to make sure that just because we're going to a new platform, all of our security is still intact and adjusted as necessary. The next thing we need to know is what data sources we're going to be connecting up to. This is where we said, all right, we need to make sure we've got connectivity from our 11G to our 10G data sources. That holds true. We're going to have to make some adjustments possibly within the RPD or in order to make sure that stays intact when we move over. And then number of scheduled jobs. This is important because although the upgrade assistant can handle the migration of the scheduled jobs, it will not reschedule the jobs themselves. So you're going to have to go in as a post task and make sure those scheduled jobs are all set up again. Any external links to external systems going to need to be make sure they're validated and applied. Paths have to be reset because you are moving to a totally different box. Typically, from a 11G box to an 11G box may or may not be the same. In most cases, they're not. Also, you're going to have to reapply any custom skins that you may want. Those will not get migrated. Depending on your authentication mechanism that you've got, especially if you've got a database authentication that you configured within the NQS config INI, that would have to be redone in the 11G environment before you did the upgrade. Then we've got some optimization preparations that we can do as well. With 11G, the consistency check is much more stringent than it was in 10G. So we want to try and minimize any consistency check issues ahead of time. So we're going to make sure that we've got all of our syntaxes correct and make sure we've got a good consistency check and resolve any kind of errors or warnings that may be in there. The initialization blocks, if they're not being used, we want to take those out. Rather than just having them marked as disabled, better off removing them. You can always reapply later. Identify any kind of users and groups. Remember, with an 11G, the users and groups are not maintained within the RPD as you could within 10G. They're all external. So you want to make sure they're going to get moved out regardless of whether you want to or not. So if you're not using them, better off getting them out of there, minimizing what the upgrade process has to go through. Then there's a couple of new issues with the 11.1.5 that were specifically specified, and that's if you're using custom date formats used by the dashboard and analysis prompts. They need to comply with these two tech notes that I've got listed here. Now I'll give you a little bit of a blurb of what these actually are doing and give you an idea. But you do want to take note of these because I do know some folks do have custom formats So they want to make sure that those are going to come across accurately, or keep note that you may have to resolve these issues if it's an issue later after the upgrade process and reapply. Finally, you've got identify and remove any additional objects. If you've got extra logical models in there, things, extra presentation objects that you're not using, you basically want to do a cleanup of the RPD and get it as minimal as you can, as well as the web catalog. If you've got extra folders that you're really not using, maybe you're upgrading your development environment, has a lot of extra development objects that were created and never utilized, kind of clean those up to help make the process a little bit smoother. So here's the guts of what those two tech notes are really talking about. Is really just the formatting and the standardization of the dates and date time. You can see the format right here, which is year, month, day format. So this has been standardized in the 11G, and so if you are utilizing something a little bit more custom, keep note of that. You may have to deal with it during regression testing or change it before you do the upgrade process. Then if you have any users or groups that have any of these symbols, the comma, the plus, equal, double quotes, the / less than, greater than, semicolon, dot, if any of those characters are in any of your groups of that, you rename them before you do the upgrade process then. And finally, get some consistency check things to know about, which were allowed in 10G but will produce an error in 11G and result in your upgrade process failing. So if you've got in your where clause on the content filter, and this would be more if you, for those of you out there that actually are familiar with the RPD and metadata, you'd know what we're talking about here with the where clause on the content filter. If you've got multiple dimensions within that where clause, those are no longer supported in 11G. You'll have to work with that a little bit differently. Leading and trailing spaces, this has always came up with the 10G consistency check, but it will cause issues in 11G. The logical columns, and there's an example out of the box column, which is a dim start date, year, quarter, number. Got to make sure your columns are mapped correctly to logical table sources to prevent any issues there. And then another thing is, especially if you're not familiar with the BI apps default metadata, if you've got a custom RPD, then you want to create two connection pools within your physical objects, one for handling queries and one for any initialization blocks that may come from that specific connection. The 10G BI apps does configure it this way. That shouldn't be a problem, but if you've got a custom RPD, take note of this and go ahead and try and resolve it before you start your upgrade process. Then finally, have yourself a decision tree. Know what your steps are, and this isn't out of the box. It's in the documentation on a decision tree. It'll help you guide you through your upgrade process, make sure you're not missing anything, and give a little bit better chance of success then. Then typical 11G directory structure, as I said, this is important to know. And the reason you want to know and become familiar with this layout, it is totally different from 10G. Easily getting lost where files are located. But the big reason for this, you got this mapping from 10G tool sets to 11G. And so knowing this information and where things are located, such as your log files, your config files, it helps you a lot more as you're trying to maintain your 11G environment and making customizations and changes to that as you're going along. So let's look at the security model and what kind of changed here. So here we've got things that affecting the identity store. The identity store is basically where your credentials are being held at. That's your default is the WebLogic LDAP. It's an embedded LDAP system. It is configurable for external as well. So in there, you're going to have an LDAP group, which is created for every group in your repository. When you upgrade your groups that you have in the repository, the RPD file, they're going to be created into the LDAP as a group. So that's where everything's going to be taken out and reapplied. Users in the administrators group will be assigned to the BI administrators, which is a new group within 11g. The policy store, which is a file-based system, this is your application roles. This is application roles, something new with 11g. So basically what you're looking at is users will be mapped to groups currently as they are in 10g, but then groups are then, and as well as users, can be applied to what's called an application role. Application role does have policies behind it. There's 3 defaults, and you can create some additional application roles as necessary. And that basically gives you the functional privileges to access OBI and what you're allowed to do within OBI, such as the BI administrator has carte blanche across everything. BI author basically is allowed to create new reports, and a BI consumer would be someone who basically is a dashboard-only user. But you can create additional policies within the WebLogic system and create these application roles within that. Then we've got the repository file. Now there is some backwards compatibility from what things, way 10G worked with the 11G. But as stated here, all of your groups will be converted to an application role reference. So what they do is basically they'll create a one-to-one, they'll create the group, they'll create a corresponding application role and reassign, and then you manage based on application role. The reason for an application role is previously when you did migrations from, say, a dev to test to prod, you always did it by groups. Well, in some locations, people had different groups based on their environment. Maybe a development group versus a production group. Well, with the application role, with the insert of that, basically you still have the concept of that, but you could still reassign your groups in that manner. You're maintaining your groups and as well as your users externally from OBI, but your application roles don't have to change. That's based on the policy of what you want to do, not so much as the environment. So now it makes for a migration much smoother going from dev to test, where you're not having to reconfigure your RPD, your security around your web catalog, because all of that's going to be controlled more from an application role reference rather than from a group. All users removed from the repositories as stated. They'll be moved into the embedded LDAP as a default. The upgraded repository is also protected and encrypted. So what that means is there is a new password in order to even access the repository both online as well as offline. In offline mode, you don't enter a user credential because the repository doesn't really know users, but you do have to enter in the encrypted password in order to open the repository up in offline mode. In online, you'd have the normal credentials that you have for 10G as well as the new encrypted password. The repository file is upgraded to contain references to users as well and to the application roles. And what that means is that if you open your repository file, you will see users in there, even though you cannot maintain or manage users within that. You'll see them in there, and that's more from in there for a reference for testing purposes, things like that, when you're dealing with primarily in the development environment. And then there's some additional reserved words that they've added in, such as your roles, which allows you to apply application roles, your permissions, the user GUID file, as well as the role, and these are coming about from the relationship. Then looking at the presentation catalog, we've got the permissions and privileges that existed to 10G are still there. That's for backwards compatibility. Which is the groups within the web catalog will still exist. They don't take them out like they did in the RPD file. They will stay there so that when you come online in your 11G environment, you're not worried about any security privileges that may have changed. But it is recommended to migrate to the application role management and eventually weed yourself off of the groups within the web catalog. Each user in the upgraded catalog is referenced using the username and GUID. This is the GUID attribute is an LDAP attribute, and it's kind of like a reference ID. And keep note of this. It's very important, not only from the initial upgrade, but if you change from the embedded LDAP to a different LDAP, you've got to make sure your users are synced up correctly with these GUID attributes. So, as I said, the 10G catalog groups will remain, and the privileges that they controlled will still exist. So your security from a catalog will basically remain intact. Things that are not upgraded is if you are currently in an SSO or an SSL configuration within your 10G environment, those will have to be reapplied in the 11G because it is a little bit different, because you are going to go through your WebLogic, your Fusion middleware to be able to set those up. And things that are backwards compatible is your initialization blocks. Those will still work if you're using authentication and authorization. And basically, so what they're saying here is the authentication and NIP block, it kind of artificially takes the application role membership. So basically, the group name and the application role name becomes synonymous, and so that keeps the your authorization intact when you're migrating upwards if you're using external authentication. So let's look at what the upgrade process itself is actually doing. So we've got two aspects. One is an in-place upgrade and the other is an out-of-place upgrade. What they're talking about here is if you are, say, on a current 11G environment, you want to migrate to the next release, then you would use the patch set assistant rather than the upgrade assistant. The upgrade assistant is for a 10G to an 11G upgrade, which is termed out-of-place upgrade. So what are we looking at from an upgrade standpoint? What can we upgrade? So basically, pretty much all of our the primary objects that you would typically think of, your metadata, your RPD, and the web catalog, which we've already mentioned extensively, a number of the users, groups, permissions, security model, all of that will come along and basically stay in place. Your data sources will still be there. So you don't really have to reapply, unless you're going to, maybe you've got XML or Excel files and your paths are different. You'd have to reapply those paths, as we stated earlier. Your scheduler schema, your delivers information, the jobs, the job history, all of that can be migrated. But remember what I stated is that it will not reschedule them. So the timers won't be reset. You'll have to go into each of those jobs and set it back up to become active again. But it should exist. The BI Publisher repository, that'll be migrated. This is a kind of a two-step process because right now in their 10G, BI Publisher basically maintains things at a file system level. And the BI Publisher objects are going to become part of the web catalog. So what the migration does in this case is it'll migrate from a 10G to an 11G file system, and then there's a second piece where you migrate the file system up into the web catalog. Then you've got the BI Publisher scheduler schema, as well as you can migrate any kind of MUD history. MUD is the multi-user development for your RPD. There's a separate command line tool. You don't use the upgrade assistant for that if you did want to migrate history. But there is a separate RPD migration utility that you would leverage to upgrade your to migrate your history over. So the steps that you typically would go through is you start the Upgrade Assistant. It'll give you a welcome screen. You specify what your operation you want to do. Look at your source details. You're going to specify those, how you're going to connect up, where everything's located, what's your WebLogic server, where is it at, what port's it running on. And then you're going to look at what components you want to process. Examining those, it's going to go through the steps, validate those items. It'll do the upgrade, give you a chance to verify the summary, and then it'll come through and complete it. So the Upgrade Assistant is in a Windows environment. It's a batch file. In Linux Unix, it's a script file just labeled ua.bat or ua.sh, and that will be used to upgrade your RPD in your web catalog. If you have multiple RPDs or if you need to come back in to upload or migrate your publisher, scheduler information, you basically would run it multiple times to handle those specific situations. If you've got a cluster 10G environment, then really what you want to do is migrate just a single instance. Take your RPD web catalog, migrate those into your 11G, and then do a scale out rather than taking each of your nodes and upgrading those independently. Now, a couple of errors that have been documented with the Upgrade Assistant, I've got them listed here for you. One of them is dealing with upgrading into the 11.115 from a catalog perspective. Basically, this is around iBot folders that have empty information. They can result in an error being issued. So you can look at this this error number, and you can get additional information out of Oracle's My Support to be able to help if you do have that situation. And then a second error that I have come across is accessing reports dealing with unions and pivot tables. This has been noted as a bug, and there is a patch available through Oracle support to help with that issue. So this is where it's important to know what is your information, what we specified earlier. Know your information that you're going to be upgrading. Know what kind of reports you've got, what's in your catalog. And try and, if at any of these kind of situations, look at whether or not you're going to be affected before you do the upgrade. So let me switch over, and I had my VM. I switched machines earlier, so let's make sure we can go through a quick demonstration of how this upgrade process actually works. So as you see, all right, I've got my 11G environment up and running. So if you haven't seen the 11G, this is the new interface to it. And you can see I've got my sample apps Lite, which is a default installation RPD web catalog that comes with it. So you can look, see, right, from a dashboard perspective, right here, I've only got the sample app Lite dashboard, which is labeled Quick Start. That's up and running. I've also got my Enterprise Manager for my Fusion middleware up and going as well, so I can look at that. And I can verify my processes as well. So what I'm going to do is, if you take note, I've got my BI home. This is where I've installed my 11G environment underneath a Fusion middleware directory structure. And then I'm going to the Oracle BI 1 instance and the bin directory. And this is where I'll find my Upgrade Assistant at. So I'm just going to start this up and just show you. I've migrated my 10G information over. So let me pull that up fairly quickly here. and show you what I did. So all I did was from a 10G, I'm just bringing over the sample sales that came with the 10G environment, just for demonstration purposes. And what I did was I just kind of replicated my directories that I need, not everything, just to give it an environment that's similar to my 10G environment. You really don't have to go to this extent. But you can see I've got my catalog. I also put in my delivers folder, even though it's empty. I put in a delivers folder because the upgrade assistant is going to ask for it. So I've basically just replicated that. I've got my repository, my sample sales repository, and since this is using XML as a data source, I've got all my XML files and brought those over in the same directory path, so I don't have to worry about my sample sales not being able to find, once it comes online in 11G, it'll be able to find my XML data without a problem. So coming back in here, I'm going to start the upgrade assistant. So give it a second here. While that's waiting, I'm going to log back into my Enterprise Manager as well. So you can see I'm running the 11.115 upgrade assistant. So this is the most recent one that's out there. And it will come up into a little window wizard that'll step you through the process. Also take note this log file. So if you should have issues, and this will be shown in the window as well, this is where you would go in if you did have errors to get more information about the error and be able to, so you don't have to do screen captures on your way. Just take note of where that's at, which is under the Oracle BI upgrade logs directory, and that'll bring in your log information. You'll be able to resolve any kind of issues that may pop up should you have any. So this is running locally on my laptop, so it is taking a little bit longer. And just to save us some time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this a little bit here. So we'll wait for that to come up. Well, that's coming up. I'm going to go ahead and step through some of these upgrade tasks, the post-upgrade tasks that you'd be looking at, just to save us some time here. So you're going to review the log, which I showed you. Keep note of where that log is going to be loaded at, what the log file is. It is dated, so you should have no problem finding it. And how much work you're going to have on a post-upgrade task will depend on the amount of customizations you've got in your 10G. Remember what I said, your scheduler agents, which is your iBots, they're not scheduled. You're going to have to reschedule those on your own. Any custom configurations that you may have, any custom JavaScripts that you've got out there, you'll need to reapply those as well. Custom messages need to be reapplied. So if you have the custom message XMLs that you've got in there, you'll have to reapply those into the new environment as well. This is where it becomes important to know where everything's located with that 11G environment. Know the 11G directory structure. Double check any kind of hard-coded paths that you may have, such as if you are using XML for data sources, make sure those paths are still accurate. And the BI Publisher, as I said, will have additional post tasks because it is a multi-step process. Some of the appearance and behavioral changes that you've got, This is a short list. You'll see that I've got a URL at the bottom. It has a more extensive listing. A lot of the appearance and behavioral issues that I've seen listed are around the charting engine. Things that worked in 10G or have been changed. The biggest reason is the 10G or the 11G charting engine is completely different than what was in 10G. So of course there will be a lot of differences around that as a result of the charting engine being completely basically rewritten for the 11G environment. So let me come back to my VM. Here we go. So here we've got the welcome screen. Maximize this. So we can see we've got our screen here. So as we step through, get this thing minimized a little bit here. So you've got options as you're coming through this. All right. So here we can checkbox, and this is different from the initial 11G release, where you basically had to do things separately, but now you can upgrade your RPD and catalog at the same time. Then you've got options if you have to come back in to do your BI publisher and your scheduler, you'd come back in through the UA and do it multiple times. So here we're going to upgrade both our RPD as well as our catalog. So we want to browse, find out where is our 10G located. So this makes it easy when I'm creating the same structure for my 10G. It's easily located. So I just go into, move all the way over to the repository directory. And picks up my repository. Now I put in my administrator's name in here. And then you're going to add what's the encrypted password that you want to use for your 11G, because as we said, this will be encrypted. So we'll put that in here as well. And then it asks for your web catalog as well as your deliveries directory. So we'll pull both of those in. Here again, this is kind of why, for demonstration purpose, I recreated my structure as I had in my 10G environment. So I made it easy. I didn't have to worry about where I was located at. I've got all my information there. So basically the next step is going to ask me about my WebLogic environment. Well, hopefully it's going to come through here. Should just come, taking a little bit. It validates this information that I've put in and should present me with my WebLogic. So here my WebLogic's running on 7001, and it wants my user and password for the WebLogic access. So this would be whatever you used when you did your installation. And so it's going to go through, examine, make sure the connectivity is all there that it needs, and it'll give me an upgrade summary. Apologize for the slowness, but you're kind of limited on hardware gives you information, so you do what you can. So basically it's going through examining, make sure everything's where I said it is. It'll give me an upgrade summary saying this is what I want to do. Yes, it is. And so then I just click on the upgrade, and it'll go through the upgrade process. So what it's doing is it's going to upgrade both my RPD and my catalog. Then it's going to put those into my existing 11G environment, stop the services, restart the services with the new RPD and the new web catalog already in place. So I'll be up and ready to go as soon as the process is finished and I have my 11G environment. So I'm going to sign out of this thing. This is when I signed in. That's kind of why I showed you this, was to show you what I was currently running before, and then I hopefully, if it doesn't take too much time with this environment, I can show you what it looks like after it's completed then, and show you everything is really online. Again, I stated also previously that log file, if you should have issues, it's at the bottom of your upgrade system window down here at the bottom down here. So should you have issues with the upgrade process, you can go to that log and get more information about what the issue is and hopefully resolve it and then try the upgrade again. So this looks like it's going to take a while. We are currently running short on time, so I'm going to let this thing run, and in the meantime I'm going to let turn it back over to Tina for any additional announcements she may have that she wants to make on that. Tina?
Yep, no problem, Marty. Next slide then. Okay, just a couple quick announcements. For those of you on the call that are planning to attend Oracle Open World, which is in about 2 weeks from now, October 2nd to 6th, the BICG Capgemini Customer Appreciation Party is taking place at the event, as we do every year. And this party features the BICG Insight Awards, where we honor those customers of ours this year that have showed us a great deal of creativity and innovation. And that event is Monday, October 3rd from 7 to 10 p.m. So if you're planning on attending Open World this year and you'd like to join us, please feel free to register for that event. The registration link is on our website at biconsultinggroup.com. Also, I just wanted to let you know that we have a couple webinars coming up through the end of the year. The next webinar after today's will be Top Reasons to Deploy BI Apps with your next ERP upgrade, and that will be on Tuesday, October 18th. And then in December, we'll be featuring a webinar on how to define your mobile BI strategy. Again, you can visit our website at biconsultinggroup.com to register for both of those webinars. Next. And finally, before I hand it back over to Marty to wrap up the demo and do some quick Q&A, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining. Time is very valuable. And as a token of our appreciation, I wanted to award 2 free BICG University training tokens to Jose Beato of Bell South and Rick Detweiler of Toyota. Congratulations to you both. Now, Marty, we can hand it back over to you to wrap things up, and we have some time to take a little bit of Q&A. If folks need to drop off, I wanted to remind you all that I will be sending out a recording of the presentation as well as a PDF of the PowerPoint deck. So, so with that, Marty, if you want to go on to Q&A.
Okay, I'll take a few of these questions that have come through. One of them says, it looks like you present the OBIEE application upgrade application. What about the data warehouse database? Yes, this upgrade process does not handle upgrading your data warehouse. You'd be looking at, if you're migrating, that would come about if you're dealing with a BICG apps upgrade, which could be independent of going to 11g, maybe part of your overall upgrade implementation plan. And so in which case you would change your data warehouse at that time along with your BICG apps. But yes, the upgrade process is specific to the OBIEE data file cells, not the data warehouse. Let's see, we've got another one in here. Will the old RPD get merged into the existing 11g RPD or overwrite? When you do the upgrade process, it basically overwrites the older 11g RPD, but by overwrite it doesn't delete it. It basically moves it to a backup scenario, so it still exists if you needed to bring the, say you had the sample light in there and you wanted to keep it. It doesn't destroy it, so you could switch them back and forth. It is primarily to get your 10G RPD and web catalog in line with your 11G environment. And one other thing, does the upgrade assistant automatically take care of SSO environment, clustered environment, having multiple presentation service URL running? No, it does not. If you recall on one of the slides, SSO would not be upgraded. You'd have to reapply your SSO environment configuration. Also, for the clustering, we had mentioned that you really want to migrate a single RPD and web catalog and then do what's referred to as a scaling, either scale out or scale up in the 11G environment to get you back into a clustered environment. And so your presentation URL, that's going to change as well, because now you're basically going through your WebLogic service and not through the presentation service itself directly. The services that were part of 10G, such as your BI server, your SAW server, all of those which ran as individual services are now part of middleware system components and not really service in the mind it was before. So hopefully that helps. I said this was really taking a long time on this environment. Do apologize for that. I can't show you anymore. But basically what will happen is it'll finish the upgrade and then basically your RPD will be in place for you, and your catalog will also be in place, and you'll be able to directly log into the new 11G with your existing 10G objects. So hopefully that's with your planning, and hopefully your upgrade can go a lot smoother. And should you have questions, we're always here to help. Thank you very much for everyone who's attended. And we probably got some more, and I'll try and get through some of these, and we'll additional questions and see if we can't get a list out to everyone who's attended then. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today for the webinar. We will be sending an email follow-up shortly with a link to the PowerPoint PDF of the presentation as well as the recording. Again, if you have any remaining questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Marty. Thanks again, and we look forward to working with you. Have a great day.